I'd like to call the West Melbourne City Council meeting back to order. We recessed after our workshop. If everyone could stand for the pledge in a moment of silence, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Can we roll call City Council, please?
Mayor Rose.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Frampus.
Here.
Councilmember Bentley.
Here.
Councilmember Young. Here. Councilmember Ditmore. Here. Councilmember McDowell.
Here.
Councilmember Adams.
Here.
Great. It's good to have everyone here tonight. And I'd like to welcome everyone to this May 2nd, 2023 meeting of the West Melbourne City Council. Members of the public are welcome to speak on any issue, whether it's on tonight's agenda or just something of interest to you. If you'd like to speak, please fill out a speaker card located by the front door, give it to the city clerk, and you'll be allocated 3 minutes to address City Council. All right. So our first item of business, the public hearing. This is the water rate increase postponement. So,
Mayor, members of the pristine West Melbourne City Council, we are looking to postpone the public hearing for the water rate case. We had our first go of it here 2 weeks ago. We have a 3-week cycle of billing, and so in order to get all of the notices and the 3 separate weeks of the cycle of the billing, we didn't want to cut it short, and so we postponed it to make sure everybody gets proper notice before we have our final reading of the public hearing.
all right. Ms. Adams, you're first.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it was the right thing to do as we get our resident communication out in terms of the water rate. So I'd like to make a motion that we postpone the public hearing for the ordinance 2310 regarding the water rate.
And that's at June 6th. Is that when you'd like to have it?
Until June 6th, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Bentley?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, we have the public forum where we allocate 3 minutes to the public to address City Council. Do we have any speaker cards? Seeing none, we'll move to consent agenda. I need a motion to pass that. Mr. Ditmore?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Ms. Young?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Now we're in the action agenda.
Moving right along.
Thank you. Classification and compensation study results.
Mayor, if I may request, we do have our architect present for our agenda item B, and our consultant for agenda item A, due to our one-on-ones, was going to grab dinner. And so if we could just do B until we get to A and wait for our consultant, should be here any minute.
Okay, that's fine. All right. So we'll do B.
Without further ado, we are joined this evening for discussing the new building department building. As tasked previously, we looked at a 1-story option. We talked at including the possibility of including a council chambers along with that, which would potentially pave the way for doing something more significant here at this site. Reached out to Zark Engineering, and Greg Zark, the architect who we have been working with, was not able to make last meeting, so we pushed it to this meeting. And it's always best to let an architect speak for his own design. And so before you this evening is the architect to talk about design and elements, as well as a architect estimated cost for the project. So without further ado, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Greg Sark, principal at the firm Sark Architecture, and our firm was approached back in October to design a concept for a new facility for the building department. And this would be an annex to the existing city hall on the site that is directly adjacent to the north. And so after meeting with staff and the city manager, we quickly recognized the issue that council chambers are not co-located with City Hall, and so the question became, how can we address the building department and improve upon the council chambers facilities so that all administrative functions of the city are essentially together on the same campus? And how can we do that in a way that not only improves the facilities, but also provides for future expansion and also enhances security, all while representing an image of and a sense of openness and transparency. And so that was what the proposition is. And I'll share with you our firm's concept solution with an emphasis on the word concept, because this is really just one possible solution and of what that would look like, and to provide kind of a high-level perspective on that and a high-level view of what the cost might be for that. And so this view that we have up on the screen now is the front entrance. It's the welcoming entrance plaza. It's 16 feet wide, and to the left of that plaza, we have the Veterans Memorial Monument that might be relocated over there, also with the flags of the 5 branches of the military. And then to the right of that is that portion of the building is the council chambers. So let's see. This is just to orient you. The Minton Road, you can see kind of along the upper left there. North is to the left on this diagram here. And you can see down in the bottom right, that is the existing City Hall building. And just to the north of that is our site. It's about a half an acre. And you can see the building takes up a good portion of that. Between those two buildings is a utility corridor. And so we've pulled those buildings apart and are keeping that utility corridor intact. And then to the west of it, along the bottom of the page, that's a drainage canal in that along that space. The main entrance faces the parking lot. You can see is this circular portion.
Yeah,
We can't.
we can't see that, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so that
We have a picture here in front of us, but
gotcha. It's
Move
kind of
your
at the
mouse, I
it's
think.
kind of at the hinge point of the kind of elongated L is that circular portion, and so it should provide the public with clear direction of where to go to enter the facility. And so on the next page, we have
I ask you a question while you're,
sure, please.
while we're on this page. The amount of office space that you have in here, how is that determined, and how much communication did you have with the actual building department and staff, and did we just try to take what we were using in the other building and transform it over here, or how did you determine that?
Great question. So let me go forward right here so we can see exactly where that is. We had several meetings with Mr. Rohde and Mr. Bradford, as well as a tour through the building department facility to where we got to look at each of their offices, see how they're used, see how the space is used.
So was anybody talked to in the building department?
Just briefly on that tour, yes.
and what's going to be housed in this new building?
But what the building department, the council chambers, and expansion space. But let me be clear about what this is. This is a very high-level concept, and if we're so fortunate to design the full building design, we go through an exhaustive programming process where we go into each space, we do a room data sheet on each room, count which pieces of furniture need to go in there, what's working for them, what's not working for them, changes
So
that they've made.
potentially the room sizes could be different.
Very much so.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I want to emphasize is this is a high-level concept to see what the possibilities are on this site and what that might possibly cost. And so
Thank you.
This is sure. So the broad divisions in this building, you can see the circular entrance. What the public will have access to is that circular entrance, the lobby just beyond that, that's kind of the square towards the middle of the building, the restrooms just beyond that, okay, and the council chambers. Everything else is technically off limits, would be access controlled.
Yes.
Okay, great. Can I,
So I also had a,
yeah, could I just do that? Great, thank you so much.
also had a question on that as well. Some people like to use the stairs rather than the elevators, and it didn't appear to me that they had access to the stairs. Is that,
In this design, if the public were to access the second floor, they would be required to use the elevator. If the staff wanted to access the second floor, they would use key card access to get to the second floor via the stairs or the elevator, for that matter, in this concept. And so that kind of public access through this entrance, we have a security station here, potentially magnetic reader here. This would be the lobby, kind of a third place type seating area. From that lobby, you can go either this way into the council chambers or this way to the reception of the building department, and then into the restrooms that are here. Beyond that, you would have access to the elevator, but like another city hall locally here, when you go to that elevator, I'm talking about Coco, you have to key card your way to the second floor. So that's what I would propose in this specific.
And requiring that key card would be for staff security on that second floor, correct? Okay.
So can you get from this building to the other building? Of the public, I mean?
So the public would have to go outside. It's about 120 feet linear distance from this entrance to that end, to the existing entrance,
To the other building?
other building's entrance, about 120 feet away.
Out in the weather, is it covered?
they'd have to use the same doors they use now to get in the main building?
Not covered.
Not covered.
In this concept, it's not covered. However, I could imagine that being an addition.
Now, I guess what I'm saying, if you go to the building department to get a permit and have to go to the cashier, which is in the other building, is that how it works?
Would probably move the cashier, right?
Yep, you'd be making payment there. The challenge, ideally in a perfect world, we connect the buildings, but unfortunately with the utility easement and the utilities that run between the two buildings, we can build sidewalks over it, but we can't build structure over it. So that's why the buildings are separate.
Not even a canopy?
We could look at that option, again, just
Certainly,
trying to,
sure. I can easily imagine a canopy that connects the entrances of these two buildings and maybe even to a drop-off place and out to the edge of to the curb of the parking lot as well. So there are things that can be done to address inclement weather with this design, even the way it is. Just kind of talking about the council chambers here, this is 110 seats that we're showing in here. There's AV storage and kind of control of the media, multimedia functions. We have a raised dais up here with 3 staff seats along one side, a podium for the public, and then on this side we added a podium for kind of address of, say, the mayor can address both council and the public from that location. This also has and what you saw in the first rendering was glass around the perimeter of this room, so it would be our vision that this would be a very light-filled space. However, the sill of that glass is at 8 feet, so you wouldn't be able to stand outside and look in to see what's going on. You'd have to enter the space.
you could.
I'm assuming we would have some kind of monitors, like we have the TV, but we would have them mounted on the wall or something.
Definitely.
How would that position, are they still going to be able to see that from?
The way that this casework is designed at the dais is very similar to what you have now, maybe even a little bit deeper, where the monitors can be larger and dropped down into the top. That's what we've done at the county before. And so that's your visibility. And then for the public, there would be things like this screen that might be mounted overhead here and overhead here, but not interrupting the view. This is a very tall ceiling in this space, so that's really easy to accommodate that type of multimedia. The other thing I want to point out is this direct connection to a committee room. And so in theory, there could be meetings going on in here. You can directly come out of that space and take your place. Or we have this this controlled access point where the public would not have access to that corridor unless you wanted to have a special meeting where the public was invited to that committee room. But again, the back corridor of the building department is this long L-shaped space that is really just for the building department. There are shared staff restrooms here that would not have public access, and the public access restrooms are here. And then if the public had to have a meeting with the building department, they would a very quick walk into this meeting room right here. So the elevator that we have is just along that side. On the potential optional second floor.
Greg, can you go back 1 second?
Sure.
So security is always a concern, especially with councils nowadays and the public. What kind of security do we have to protect the council and the public, and as far as the council chambers?
So as far as the council chambers, there's only one way that the public will enter this building. This is an emergency exit only out of this space, since this is required to have 2 exits, right? So this is an emergency exit, alarmed door would have a panic bar on the inside and a blank plate on the outside, not even a key card access on that door.
Okay.
On this, so if this is the only entrance for the public, they're coming through a metal detector. If you'd like to add that to the project, I show one in here, and a security desk kind of just off that entry. And then once the public can get into this lobby here, again, this is the only space they can enter the lobby and these restrooms here, and then into the council chambers.
Okay.
And currently, we're not proposing a metal detector, but based on the trends of the communities around us, it's probably not too far off that we'll need to install a metal detector and then have a little security office for the police officer to.
Yeah, I didn't know if you'd have the door that goes into the council chambers.
We've been seeing them more in the lobby before people get in, but it's a design feature we're trying to plan for. Not, we don't have an existing security function, but it's a feature we're trying to plan for.
Thank you.
And so the portion of the building that is 2 stories is really just that L-shaped portion of the building above the building department. And so it's an L-shaped space, a double-loaded corridor, meaning rooms on both sides of it, with stairwells at each end. And what we've conceived in the pricing for this is that this would just be a shell space for future programming and future build-out. So right now, it's just empty structural space. The elevator hoistway, of course, would need to be built, but the elevator car doesn't need to be installed yet. So just the hoistway, and so the structural elements need to be done. And so there's a stair at each end, and this would provide up to 17 additional private offices. But of course, that's just one configuration. There could be cubicles, there could be a training room up here, there could be lots of uses for this space.
Could put shuffleball in there, before.
Pickleball.
Pickleball.
Indoor pickleball. Might be barely wide enough for pickleball. Here are some 3D views of the building. This one is a view from the northeast. You can see the city hall in the background there is partial site modeled here. This is a view more from the entrance from the southeast, and you can see that glass that I'm talking about, letting a lot of light into the council chambers. Glass today is so high-tech, it can be fairly transparent but not have a lot of heat gain. So this would be insulated, missile impact rated glass. So that's what we would propose for this. And then you can see the clear entrance element so that there's no confusion about where do I go to get into the building. And just one more, this is the colorized view, again, with the council chambers in the foreground, some ornamental landscaping kind of as a buffer between the access road. And then one thing I didn't mention earlier was that behind this Veterans Memorial Monument right here, we have a wall that kind of creates this this outdoor patio, covered outdoor patio. So that's really right now the staff doesn't really have that for this building. So this would be kind of a picnic patio, eat your lunch type of place right behind.
Now, is the patio going all the way across to the other city hall? I know it's not in the picture there, but I thought I saw or read that it was going to connect both buildings.
So it certainly can, and it's pretty easy to do that. Although this is not an entrance door, this is the archive room of City Hall, so this is not really a good...
So employees would also have to walk through the front door to come around to that area?
Yeah, unless... There's a back door. There is
Okay.
this back door, but then there's also, if I go to it,
Because it would seem to me if we're going to use it for both buildings, that we should have it connect and access.
So this would be your canopy. If you were to do a covered walkway, it would be from this back door here along and around the corner of the building and then kind of connect to that. But that covered picnic area is connected to this door here with a covering. So, and then...
And we currently have that now. We have meetings in the police training room, and the police department uses our conference room. So, I mean, there is a fair amount of walking back and forth currently between the two buildings. So that's not too bad of a stretch of a walk.
Unless it's raining. Anyhow.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the numbers a little bit?
Sure.
You have the building department and chambers combined. Is that absorbing the whole 2.8 million from the building department, and we would be covering the rest for the chambers? Or does more of the building, I know we have 2.8 we have to use, but there's more there that we could use.
Yeah, I think at a high level, it's about 65-35 of a split of cost, 65 being building department, 35 being council chambers and other shell. We have 2.8 on hand.
Well, that would be the difference between the 55 or 5.5 and because under the building department and chambers, you have 4.5, almost 4.6, but then you have the total price is 5.5. I'm assuming that's with the shell on top, correct?
Yeah, 5 point.
Yes, it is. So we have two columns here, and the primary column is this one that says under the word price. And so that was the entire building.
That includes the second story.
That was inclusive of the second.
So without the second story, it's 4.6?
That would be our budget plan.
And out of the 4.6, you're saying 35%?
About 65-35.
And that was based on the square footage of each.
And what is the square footage of each?
So what is the square footage of each?
It seems like the chamber chamber would be a little bit cheaper since it's an open space as opposed to all the offices and everything. Is that not true?
I wouldn't necessarily consider it that way because of the level of.
So it's definitely just square footage straight.
And that's what I want to preface this discussion about cost, is that this is, again, a very high-level view. And what we do, what we're attempting to do is help our client with a budget plan for this building. This is not an actual estimate that a general contractor would do. What architects will do is we'll look at all of our projects where we have schedules of values for each one, look back at all that historic data, and for each one we can put escalation from that time to this time and understand what that difference is. And so we look at, on a per square foot basis, what each of the construction divisions that you see in here, what those are per square foot, because that's information that we truly have access to, whereas we don't necessarily call up a glass installer and say, hey, look at my concept plans, how much is that going to cost for this project? So this is using historical data to develop a budget plan. And as we develop the design, what we do is we bring in actual cost estimators as we get to 30 and 60% level design, which then is verification of, we continue to verify. So this is called the target value method, where we develop targets and then we design to those targets as we go, and at milestones along the design we make adjustments so that we can stay on budget. That's what this is. Is that?
Yeah, kind of understand that. Like the shared spaces, the entranceway and all that, do we just break that down in a percentage?
Per square foot is
And it's a percentage, like the entranceway is used by both, so the 65, 35, the cost.
You do it square footage of the building and the.
Well, I'm just talking about, it's a shared space, and even the,
I think
because we would have the bathrooms and we would have the lobby and we would have all that just with the building department. Why would we charge that off to the chamber? I mean, it has to be there for the building department. So would that get charged off to the chamber? Because we need it, period.
So your line of thinking is exactly what I did.
Okay.
So the building department needs an entrance. The building department has that lobby. The building department has restrooms. And so the chamber portion is the chambers, that back hallway, and the committee room.
Thank you.
The second floor adds the elevator, the 2 stairwells, and all of the structure for the second floor.
Mr. McDowell?
Thank you, Mayor. In that public space, that is a public space. I know you referenced it as an employee space for picnicking or lunch or whatever, but that is a public space, correct?
There's in this current design, there's nothing that's physically preventing the public from using that space other than kind of small cues that say this is more for staff than it is for public, such as that wall. And so there's nothing preventing the public from going back there.
Well, I'm just envisioning that it's inviting, it's friendly, it looks good, a nice place to sit and have a discussion or a meeting. And anyway, so that was part of what I was wondering, is how visible and accessible it was to the public that just pulls up and says, oh, that looks like a place to have lunch. I think I'll just hang here, which is fine. The next question was on the furnishings. None of that was in these projections, right? Because you're talking about lots of offices, lots of spaces. Was that in the, did I miss that?
If I'm doing my job to help build a budget plan on this, I am helping with identifying money for furnishings as well as money for contingency of things that
Okay.
might go wrong along the way. So there's a line item down here, a contingency fund, that is 10% of the overall cost. That's added on at the very end. And then also we have contractor overhead and profit at 10%. I'm seeing it at 6% lately. So those are things that we're taking a more
Right.
conservative approach.
And I have no idea, I know this is pretty far off, but is there, when you get into construction, who pays for it, how it gets built, how the monies flow through, has some tax implications, I believe. So I'm sure we can talk about that when we hit that part.
Yeah, I think earlier the question was funding. We have the 2.8 with the building department that we need to spend. The building department continues to generate revenue, and so that's a revenue source for it. But clearly the building department, while it could, it doesn't really need to pay for the rest of this building. There should be some money that comes from the general fund relative to this piece of it. And so, you know, whether we use general fund reserve, whether we budget for it, whether we chase grants, whether we roll it into the borrowing that will be necessary for the water plant, all viable options and all great questions. But we have a good opportunity this evening to kind of talk at a high level of the concept, to kind of keep it focused on, is this the look, is this the size, the second floor, are we doing enough security for the future, do we like the windows, do we not like the windows, do we like the entrance, do we not like the entrance, would all be good topics while we have the architect in front of us. How we piece this up and come up with a funding plan, we're happy to present at a future meeting. But, you know, we don't know how to answer that question until we know what it's going to look like. We don't know what it's going to look like until you guys, until the council provides some good feedback. We've got the man in front of us who is on his second 2.5, second and a half rendering, and certainly looking for some feedback whether it's in the right direction or if it's not hitting the mark. So.
All right, well then, in that same vein, I will say that I did enjoy the first rendering, and this is better. So I do like the idea of adding the circular. So I think it's actually, I'm glad we got pushback on it because it looked institutional, too institutional. So I think it's nice to add a little bit of character to it. With that said, I also know that we talked about environmental, we talked about where we at with the different standards for sustainability and leads, and is that not a, you know, that's a flat roof, which is great opportunity for a green roof, you know. Is that roof stable? Are we making it architecturally sound for possible using it later, or is it just a roof?
Well, unless you plan for it, you can't convert a roof to being green without significantly structurally reinforcing that roof. So we want to
put my lawn chair up there and sit up there. I can't do that. No.
Yeah, that's not part of this design. We would actually propose some mechanical equipment up on.
Yep, and we've talked about the level of lead certification. We do have some, just to kind of show the possible future. We have some electric charging stations. But the lead certification, again, just trying to stay at a high level. Is this the design? Is this the kind of layout we're looking for, or are we back to the drawing board?
Ms. Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. My favorite piece is the round structural front. I think that's a very eye-catching piece when residents do pull in or they need to go there for the building department or for a future meeting. So I applaud you on that piece because it is, I think, one of my favorite ones looking at the visual design of this. I will agree with Mr. McDowell. I was fine with the first version, but I do think the second version looks more visually appealing. So good job. Thank you, sir. My questions in terms of the current design, I've counted 3 potential additional more public, or not public, sorry. I counted 3 staff exits if, let's say, there's a security issue coming through that main entrance. Does 3 sound correct to you? Okay, so assuming those 3 are accessible to staff, I only counted 2 potential exits for the public if there is any sort of security emergency. One of those being that entranceway, the other one being where the council chambers are. If you are someone, and I think of the way that I would talk with my students about if there's an emergency, you go to the restroom, the door is closed, the door is locked, things like that. But if that occurs in this situation and a threat is coming from the main entrance area, my understanding looking at this is there's really nowhere for those people to go. Is that correct?
is a potential solution to that.
Okay.
And we were talking about that earlier in the office, was that this door shown where the cursor is really could and even should be an alarmed panic bar. So it's a push bar, but if you push on it and you didn't use your key card, an alarm's going to go off. So
Okay.
so this allows access through to use this exit right here, and it really needs to be as part of the egress plan for this building.
That makes me feel better with that exit. Thank you. I was just thinking ahead in terms of that. Not that I ever hope we need it. The second question would be looking at hallways, entranceways, things like that. I'm going to assume all of them are ADA accessible, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And my third one is I had a note on the first floor, and maybe I'm not reading it correctly or not understanding it, but right near where we have kind of the corner desks in, trying to look where directionally that is, you have your, I think you're on the second, no, that's the first floor. Okay, so one of them is marked shower? Is that correct? If I looked really close?
Yeah, and in fact, this was a comment that came back from the building department that
Okay.
we addressed from the first design to the second. So we have staff restrooms and the shower kind of, and the break room all kind of co-located. And this would be just for the building department. Inspectors that are out in the field all day that might have a meeting later.
Okay.
Opportunity to clean up.
I just wanted to understand what it was doing. Thank you.
Mr. Bentley?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy with the look of it, so good job. And to address Mr. McDowell's comment, I do see in here where he's got a placeholder, I think, for everything, including furnishings. So he's got a $100,000 placeholder in there for that. So I kind of went through that earlier, and I didn't see anything that was really left out. So pending prices skyrocketing out beyond what we know of today, it looks like everything's accounted for, and it looks like that's a pretty fair representation. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, Ms. Young?
Thank you very much, Mayor. In hurricane events, when our city manager or other city staff or police officers are there 24 hours and they are on their cots sleeping, which, welcome to Florida, is this building such, I mean, I see you have showers and that sort, but is this building such that employees could stay there as well? Those that necessary employees, emergency employees, could stay there as well. It has a shower, I see that.
See why not? There's a shower. We have break room facilities. We don't have cooking facilities per se, but for PB&J sandwiches and so forth, that could certainly be done here.
That's not going to cut it with our staff.
But we can also have a microwave.
We do tend to migrate over to the police department building during meals, as they do an excellent job providing food for the police department during hurricanes. So, yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons for the shower. You know, we've now implemented three overnights in the last year that we've hunkered down, and so it's good. We like the ability to have somebody in each building, just so that somebody's keeping out and somebody's kind of monitoring each building. And so the PD houses the vast majority. Public Works house in Public Works, and then a few of us house at City Hall. And I can see, building official and few people housing in this building as well. So,
Is there a place for a generator should the power go out?
I think that would be a very wise thing to add to the building, but I believe this electrical number, the project that I used as a model for this electrical number, one of the projects I used was the new Satellite Beach Public Works facility, which we were part of, and so that electrical number did include a generator. So if we're apples to apples, then yes, that was a full building generator over there.
All right, thank you.
So if we're going to have employees shower and spend the night, it seems like maybe one of those rooms should be some cots or something until we actually need this space to. Yeah. In the meantime, the first floor.
bedroom.
Already.
Again, I asked you before, what's the square footage of all three different entities separately, and then.
I'm sorry, I didn't have that answer right away, but I do have do have the first and second floor breakout, and then I think we can use the 65-35 split to get more detailed on that if we need to. So the second floor is 4,475 square feet, and the first floor is 9,645 square feet. So let's see, the total.
14,000 and change, yeah.
I think it's 14,600.
14,120.
Yeah. And where's the council chambers? How much of, is that included in the 9,600?
That would be included in the 9,600,
So if you take the council chambers out,
65% of that.
65% of the 96? Okay. And again, go over the cost again. I know if you just do a single story, there's a lot less expense as far as the ceilings, the rebar, the elevators, and everything else. So,
Sure. So when we had this over here, so what we did was we removed the elevators and conveying systems here. That's really was just that item, the elevator piece.
can you speak in the mic a little bit more?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So that was this line item right here, the elevators
Yeah.
and conveying systems. But we also looked at kind of for each of these line items, assigning whether or not we'd be doing it based on square footage or based with the chambers or square footage without the chambers for that second floor. So that's how these numbers are kind of, these are all, for example, the thermal and moisture protection, that includes all the stucco, the roofing, and so forth. That is on here at 85% because you still have that entire envelope of the building that you would have to do on that first floor. That's just getting elevated up, and so it's just that extra portion of the wall there. So it's not always a direct, here's an additional 4,000 square feet on every one of these divisions in here. We try to get a little bit more scientific about it than that. But this is the difference, the true difference is right here at the subtotal. You can see it's approximately, there's 350 plus, it's about $770,000 different when you're just talking about the base construction cost in this line in green. And then we have all the indirect costs, and that's where we add the main item on there really is this contingency fund, that 10% that we're adding on top of all of this. That is for each of these, both of them account for that contingency fund, and then also the overhead and profit as well. So those are some big numbers that get added on to that base construction cost, but truly the difference is right here at about 770.
I'm just trying to also justify cost versus second floor necessary, and we haven't really, I don't think we have a definitive answer on that, do we, boss? Second floor?
As what the cost would be?
Well, we don't really know what it was the cost, but built out, but it's.
Yeah, I mean, we did the architect did the math, and it's right, it's on the paper here, 770, plus the profit. The question of construction for a municipality is always trying to future, the dollar value today of future proofing, because you can never add, you just can't do it in the future. We can't add a third floor to City Hall now. We could have when we built, but that ship has sailed. And so it's really a math equation, and it's really up to a policy direction of the council. 4,000 square feet, future proofing us of office into the future for about $750,000 or not. I mean, that's the question at hand.
Do you feel like where we are right now with building department staff and where we're expected to be when we cap out as a city, do you feel like staff will need to grow into that second floor, or is that just something that we're planning for other departments or other uses?
The easy answer is I can't tell you what will go in there today if we built it, the fair answer is you tend to always need more space, right? So, you know, I sound like an attorney, I know, kind of, you know, riding the fence a little bit. But the true reality is, you know, the 4,000 square feet that would go into that second floor, I can't say we have a need for that right now. But again, we're talking about different things in the future, and offices, you know, having the flexibility to move different departments around at City Hall, you know, additional conference room, additional training room, those items could be used in the future. We could kick ourselves for not having them, or, you know, what's the worst? I guess the worst case is 10 years from now we're fully developed and we haven't come up with a use for that yet. And so it could become then community space. It could become, you know, recreation space in the future. So it's really, I think the question is $750,000 to future-proof your offices. Is that cost worth it? We didn't know until you put the numbers together. You know, you don't know until you see it.
So this obviously adds a lot of space to City Hall. Have you, do you have any money or any thoughts on renovating the existing City Hall because the building department's moving, and is that, I mean, that's part of the consideration too.
We did not look at that as an exercise. One of the things that we would look at is the spans of that floor plate of the second floor, whether or not there is a column line down the middle of that building. I think there may be, and so when you have when you want to open up a room that's the whole depth of that building, it's going to be the columns that are existing there that you either need to structurally span with a new beam so you can get rid of some of them, or and then you also have ceiling height issues. The bigger your room gets, the taller the ceiling wants to be, and so some of those things might not be as compatible in that building. But we'd be happy to look at it. You know.
Yeah, you were part of the team that did some of the remodel at existing City Hall, correct?
We were part of the team, yes.
So also the thought of having windows and have an architect, it's a very pretty picture. I think we all like it. But sometimes the architects get a little carried away versus the builder, and those two don't always mesh together. So how are you working together with a construction person to make sure this happens at a reasonable cost? And if we got rid of some of the glass, which maybe we probably don't want to do, but does that add 20% of the cost of this building, or those kind of things?
Sure. So I think what your question is kind of pointing towards is how do we manage the design process so that we don't get all the way to the end and have a price tag that we have no appetite for. And so sometimes we'll do design build projects, and some of the more reputable local contractors, that are all ones that we've worked with on numerous projects. But you have that as a method. You have a construction manager at risk method. So there's different methodologies that you can do to bring in the contractor for price verification earlier on during the design. The other method is the traditional design it, finish your design, bid it, finish the bid, build it, and that method carries some questions along with it. We operate fine in all three realms, but in that third method, what we would really want to do is to bring in a third-party estimator at each of our milestones to get some kind of verification that the targets that we've put before you here are targets that we're confident we can hit with the construction. So I do think that's certainly something we should talk about more in terms of the construction delivery method. Design build, construction manager, or design bid build are those three. And with design build, a lot of people like that because you get more up-to-date pricing from people that are actually buying those materials on a regular basis.
Which of those guarantees the price for the city so we really know what we're spending, the design build?
Either design build or the CM at risk both can be an RFP, a request for proposals, that carries a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price. And so when you put out those things for proposal, before you even start construction, you can get from the proposers a GMP. And then there's different things that you can do with that GMP. If there's savings, you can split the savings as an incentive, or you can, but the GMP really is supposed to be a ceiling, so long as the scope doesn't change. The scope of the project doesn't change. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Frampus.
So I'm not going to be as nice as my counterparts up here. I didn't like your first design at all. And I love this one, so thumbs up to that. I think it's a lot better.
There you have it.
I'm still concerned with parking. I know everybody says that we have plenty of parking, but when we have our early meetings and there's still staff members there and there could potentially be a hot button item and we maybe fill up the room, is there going to be enough parking? And if not, what would we do with that? Because we're not going to make them walk across the street, or, I'm just curious, if we were to fill up the room, where would we put an overflow in this building? So I don't know if you have any answers for that.
I don't have any good answers for that, I'll say. I think that this lobby could be somewhat of an overflow. I do think that there's, potential for, multimedia setups kind of outside here. And I think for the parking, where we're only adding 7 spaces for this building, in that parking lot, there are some options that we've been looking at with their civil engineer at Bowman Engineering. Then we've looked at the far south end of the site, adding parking there, kind of where the fleet vehicles are. And then, what happens kind of organically where people are going to park when there's a huge overflow, and probably you'll find people parking along the access road.
I think it's going to be rare because this is our normal.
Yeah.
But
we have, the upside to that site over there is the access road. You can park alongside it, where you can't do that too much here. I will also say the volume of capacity inside the new council chambers is tremendously larger than this council chambers. So far, all the events that have filled this room since I have been here, which, is a short time, would fit in the new council chambers. So that's one item. And then our thought is just a simple overflow into that lobby for the handful of people who kind of come late and just want to be able to hear it and see it. You can kind of stand in the lobby, but.
Are you proposing fixed seating in there, or?
Actually, no, I'd propose a flat floor similar to in here. And with that flat floor would be movable chairs, stackable movable chairs. It's a lot less.
And
expensive and more
so that being said, if we had to move some of those chairs out, where would we store them? It doesn't seem like there's a lot of storage here unless we converted one of the rooms into a.
There's not a lot of storage built in here.
Upstairs?
Upstairs.
I was going to suggest that because you're talking about space. You're always looking for storage space, so we would probably be using that space upstairs for storage until we put offices up there, I'm guessing, correct?
There's no elevators, you're going to carry them up and down the stairs.
The elevator's going to be in.
The shaft.
Not the working part of it.
Okay.
Well, maybe we do the elevator.
That is the whole
Elevator, nowhere, yeah.
For the elevator, you're talking $79,000 for a working elevator, right? So,
Yeah, but a basement would be cheaper.
underwater.
isn't that what that says? Elevators and conveyance systems, $79,000.
Just the elevator car itself and the controls for it, the hoistway and the structure and the pit and the concrete for all that would be in the concrete number and the masonry number. So just when we're talking about the elevator costs, it's really just, doesn't include the hoistway. It's just the contract to the elevator company. That makes makes sense. But but if you're going to shell out the second floor, that hoistway is in place, and that pit is also in place. So the delta is what's in the bid, what's in the budget plan.
Put the chairs in the elevator shaft area.
Well, and there is a utility access contiguous with the council chambers off the entranceway that could be some storage as well.
There is.
Factored in for utilities.
Certainly. This little space right here, we're just counting that as the fire riser room because this will be a sprinklered building. And so this whole building would be a fire sprinkler system throughout it.
I'm sure we could push the chairs back against the walls and all that kind of stuff, so I was just
Or we
curious
could
of what we
build
would do.
a closet into this room over here. So there are definitely some options there to address that.
And what was the parking to the south? You're talking about expanding that lot?
Well, it's not shown here on this site plan, but way over here to the south, I think there is a potential to add a couple more parking spaces back in that way.
Thank you.
I think I do have a major issue with, if this was a regular building with a public building down the street, we would not allow this size building to be built with 7 parking spaces. So riddle me how many this would require if this wasn't just the city. Because if we're going to fill out this council chamber and they're all driving, where are they going to park? Legally park.
Sure. So a couple things come to mind. One, we need to check when we built City Hall because, again, this building pad that we are looking at to put the new building department building was factored in when the site was constructed. So all the stormwater, we need to verify that the parking was also included for this. This building was always factored to be here, the building department building. I say this building. Right, they set it up for a 3-building site, and so we can verify with the parking. Additionally, again, the quantity of parking over there versus the quantity of parking over here is still a vast improvement. And so, fair question to ask what the requirements of a building this size for this use would require, but let's also double check to make sure that we didn't factor that parking in already when we built City Hall.
I don't think you have too many parking spaces left when you have a busy day at City Hall, except
a lot.
Now they all work at home, so I guess there's more spaces. But besides that,
lots of parking at City Hall.
You really think so? Okay. Wow. All right, Mr. McDowell.
Thank you, Mayor. Since the deputy mayor likes it, I reserve the right to change my mind that I don't like it anymore. No.
For the record.
That's good news to hear. The 9,000 footprint on the first floor kind of triggered something when you were talking, Mayor, about the incremental cost. I just want to make sure I understand that incremental cost is around $750 plus the additional contingencies and things like that. And it's based on not really having an idea of what we want other than the fact that it's there and it's available. So it raised the question to me about scalability, and you were saying we didn't design the old buildings with raising it up, so the 9,000 footprint doesn't have a second floor on that side of the building above the chamber. Right. So was that a consideration as to why did we get to that optimal amount saying let's add 4,000 to the second floor because it's on that side of the building? I mean, is it a cost thing why did we stop at 4,000? And is it not, can you build a third floor on that building? I mean, if we're going to be scalable and looking at, I'm just asking that question architecturally.
Sure. It's certainly possible. This is a long span roof right here. So if we put a second floor over it, we'd want to have columns over that span. Now, we could do it, but this is also a different ceiling height and different roof height would follow. So Possibly, the second floor could expand across, this lower area that you see back behind the cylindrical entrance there. So there certainly is an opportunity to add more to the second floor.
I'm not suggesting we do. I was just curious if that was in the thought process, because it is a great, I like the idea, but I was just wondering where we came up with that optimal architecturally 4,000 extra feet of square
It,
foot.
It doesn't mean you have to change it.
Yes.
it was kind of guided by,
Can you put that on the record?
it was kind of guided by just general structural approach to short spans. So a double-loaded corridor was very simple. Putting a staircase at each end was very simple, just one path through that space. When it gets wider, maybe we don't look at offices along this side. If this was wider, then we could look at more like training rooms along here. There's certainly other things that can be done. These walls right here translate into the first floor, so they're not like having to be supported by some other kind of span. So you can see that, you can see where these walls are structural walls all the way through down into the foundation.
Got it.
So,
Okay,
so it was
thank
kind
you.
of a structural type of approach.
Thank you.
So Greg, what is the second floor going to look like when you walk inside of it?
When you walk inside the second floor, we have some windows that somewhat determine what it's going to look like. We're showing some windows that line up with the windows on the first floor, so that somewhat, determines what it's going to feel like on the inside. But other than that, it can look like whatever we want it to look like in terms of, but right now, in this shell design, we're talking about a dark shell, which means structure and insulation, and that's it.
Okay, so someday when you want to add drywall and those kind of things, how do you get that in there?
Stairwells, the stairwells, or or possibly one of these windows. Maybe as we design this, we design some windows with a lower sill so that you can fork some of those things into that space. But that's a great question.
So I guess a question, because it's a lot harder when we go back X number of years to retrofit everything inside. I mean, you have the shell, so you can design like you want, but that's going to cost a lot more than finishing it today. So what can be done today to mitigate some of that, i.e. put the drywall and the rough plumbing or the air, whatever you need to do? I don't know that much about that, but
I think as long as you want to keep it flexible, there means that you're going to be building some walls in the future, and you're going to be carrying sheets of dry sheetrock up and down those staircases. So it's not uncommon, I'll say.
The plumbing will be roughed in, right?
The plumbing will certainly be roughed in. Yeah.
well, that might dictate how you're designing the second floor also.
Well, it is. The bathrooms are already
We're
specified on the second floor.
So we show them here dotted in. So everything that's in here with a dotted line is stuff that would not be built. So this is just kind of, here's a good way that it could be laid out efficiently. And it would require some restrooms up there, so we show those. And that's a good location for those restrooms because they stack nicely above the break room that's down there. And so all of the plumbing in the building is kind of in a tight space.
Yeah. I guess I was just curious what it would take to finish the second floor without the actual offices, pretty much have it done without little cubby holes and things like that. So
there's another level beyond. So in the trade, we use the term dark shell, which is what I described. Then there's vanilla shell, and that has drywall, ceilings, and air conditioning. Mm-hmm. And then you come in later on and you put in all the interior walls. Yeah. So we could certainly, during the design process, look at it both ways, price it both ways, and make a decision at that time.
it makes sense to get that cost anyway, or get that Because you're not really designing anything, not that much up there, just the exterior wall, interior on the outside. Okay, thank you. Anything else? City manager, you need anything else?
Looking for some direction from the city council? Looking from some direction from the city council as to, based off the first design and this design, if this is the direction we're moving in, and then we can come up with some funding options and bring that forward. But we only paid for so many architect visits, and so.
Happy to come back.
Oh, we have that on record. No. Wanted to have him in front so he could get the feedback as opposed to a third party, so.
Well, like you said, we need to, obviously, cost is kind of important, or we would have everything with gold-plated fixtures, but the building that's existing over there is pretty much a plain Jane, and this one's going to stick out like like a nice sore thumb. So, but I think you have to look at the total picture of what it's going to cost to renovate that building. So if they're moving over here and then you want to move conference rooms and things like that over there. So, and parking spaces, I want to see what our code says on that. So. Mr. McDowell, did you get your answer?
Well, I was looking for direction from you as far as, are you looking for a nod that you like this concept, that you...
Yeah, I think...
Because, I mean, I would support it. I wouldn't see any reason why we wouldn't support it at this point.
Yeah, the only reason might be is the cost reasonable as opposed to glass versus something else, or just regular windows. And
so the decision from A to B, as far as if we build this is the concept we're comfortable with.
Sure, it's a nice, easy flowing
Do
design.
you need a motion for that, or are you comfortable with just accepting that?
I think it's just conceptual right now. Okay. Ms. Young, and then Mr. Bentley.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to weigh in. I, too, did not like the first concept at all, but I like this one much, much better. And I do like this particular rendering here. It's just that, and I like all the glass for the council chambers. Could the second floor here with these interior offices that will be looking over the roof of the council chambers, and of course we'll do something nice up there, I'm sure. Couldn't that not be more glass up there to be more like the council chambers down below? And also so that there's more light for these offices on the second floor, should we ever decide to use them?
Certainly. You can, this wall right here would be, in our pricing is a masonry wall, so it's concrete block. And so, yes, you can't span forever, but you can certainly do more glass than what we're showing here. We only put windows where there was one window per office is what we did. And okay. It's not, this view that we're looking at is not truly what you will experience. You'll be down a little bit closer to the ground. So I don't think that this wall will be quite as visible or architecturally prominent as maybe this rendering depicts.
Okay, and I see that there is a lot of green space around where the trees and things are. Could any of that be used for parking as well, since we're talking about 7 parking spaces?
What's not shown here is this little peninsula has a transformer and a double detector check valve right here, and and what will have to happen is some ornamental landscaping to kind of hide those elements, and so this green space right here would not really be available. This green space right here, we didn't really. It's very triangular, not really conducive to an extension of the parking lot. So, but definitely worthy of more study.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Bentley.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just provide direction to the city manager to take it to the next step. I think we're all pretty happy with what we've seen. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Deputy Mayor Frampus.
I agree. I think we should take it to the next step, find out the financing. I think this building is going to complement what we have and not take away from what we have. So I think we should move forward.
What's next?
And as far as, I don't know what dollars we're looking at, but we do put money in the savings for the reason of these big capital projects like this. So taking money out, depending on how much it is why we have reserve. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greg.
Looks nice.
All right.
Really.
All right. So that was item 13B. Now we'll go backward to item 13A, classification and compensation study results.
So Mayor and members of the City Council, if you just want to give us a quick minute, we will redress the stage here and get ready for our presentation for our comp and class
We'll
study.
take a few minute break then.
That'd be-
Council's asking for. Okay. So.
Hey.
So my name is Jennifer Kern. I'm the HR Director for the City of West Melbourne, and I am here tonight with Kristen Gilly, who is the Senior Consultant for Evergreen Solutions. And we are here to present the classification and compensation study. So in 2018, Evergreen did a classification and compensation study for us, and we several of their recommendations we put into play at that time. Prior to that, we had not done one for over 10 years. So they recommend every 3 to 5 years that we conduct one, and we're at the 4.5 year mark, so we're right on track for that. We started the process in October after the City Council approved the study, and actually Kristen is going to go through a lot of the processes, the findings, and recommendations. We are looking for a 2-step process to implement. So after this council meeting, if you all approve, we're looking to implement on May 14, 2023, a one-time market adjustment to transition our employees to the new open range pay plan for all non-represented employees. The reason we chose the May 14th date is it is the beginning of the next pay period after the council meeting. This will move our employees to their place on the market and raise the starting hourly wage to $15.50 an hour. We had about 30 employees that after this study and the move to market would not have received an adjustment at all because they were either at market or above market. So for those employees, we are looking at doing a 2% increase for them. So all 86 employees will be receiving some type of increase. After that, on October 1, we are looking to do a second increase. And this is part of their recommendation, and that would be to start employees at a minimum wage of $16 hourly. And then raises after that would be based on a merit performance increase. There are pleasantly no changes to benefits. We had got a very good response on that. And then we do have some classification changes that we were going to be doing as part of our restructuring process. So we do have 4 motions that are on the table for your review. So the first one is the acceptance of the class and compensation study as presented by Evergreen. The second one is resolution number 2023-05, and that is the amendment to the budget to include the move to market solution as proposed by the consultant. The third one is adoption of resolution 2023-06, effectuating the proposed pay plan effective May 14, 2023. And the last one is the adoption of resolution 2023-07, effectuating the proposed pay plan, increasing the minimum wage to $16 hourly, effective October 1, 2023. So at this time, Kristen is going to go over the process, the findings, the recommendations, and I'll turn it over to her.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. So my name is Kristen Gilly. I'm a senior consultant with Evergreen Solutions. We're based out of Tallahassee, and tonight I'm going to be presenting our findings as well as our recommendations for the compensation and classification study. So to give you an overview of this presentation, we're going to review our study goals, the different project phases, including the internal review as well as the external review, and then our recommendations. So the goals of our study were to review your current compensation and classification system for internal equity. We want to make sure that positions are aligned correctly internally. We also surveyed peer organizations on both salary and benefits to ensure external equity. And then finally, our other goal was to produce recommendations to provide the city with an updated system that was equitable both internally and externally. So as it was mentioned, our project kicked off in October of 2022, and that started with us collecting a variety of different types of data, one of those being the employee database, which gives us information on all of the employees within the city, when they started with the city, as well as when they moved into their current classification, their current position title, and department to which they belong. We also gathered the salary schedules and job descriptions in case those had been updated since the last study, as well as the organizational charts, personnel policies and procedures related to compensation and classification, and then any all of your budget, your benefits information as we were conducting the benefits analysis. So to start off, all of that, those documents that we collected allows us to do what we call the assessment of current conditions. This is where we're just looking and seeing, what is, how is the structure currently? Are there any things that stick out to us that may need to be addressed, so on and so forth. So surprisingly, in this assessment of current conditions, there were really no red flags. Your system was still fairly structured. It was fairly organized. We did notice that the midpoint progressions did vary based on how you guys were utilizing the pay plan. You guys had collapsed some of the pay grades because of the move to $15 minimum wage. But that's, once again, that's not anything that really sticks out to us. As far as salary distribution with your employees, we could see that employees are progressing through the pay range. The majority of the employees' salaries were falling above the midpoint. So 57.6% were falling above the midpoint. So that tells us, yes, folks are going, they are getting, raises, whether it's performance, COLA, things like that. So the next phase of our study is the employee outreach. This is where we conducted on-site interviews and focus groups back in January. The focus groups consisted of a cross-section of classifications. We wanted to make sure that we were speaking to, folks at the entry level versus and the management level and everywhere in between. So there were approximately 55 participants in those focus groups and interviews. In addition to the focus groups and interviews, we also released an employee outreach survey. So this went out to every single employee. This gave them a chance to voice any concerns that they had. If they weren't able to attend a focus group, we still wanted them to be able to provide some input. So as part of outreach, we always start off by asking, what made you want to come work for the city of West Melbourne? Why have you stayed? And so it was found that most folks, they came to work and they remained because of the location. Many folks are from here. Job security and stability that isn't always found in the private sector. Job satisfaction and enjoyment. Folks like what they do. They like working for the city. The benefits in retirement were a big one. And then, of course, coworkers and leadership. It's always nice to enjoy working with someone who you like. Of course, we always ask about any concerns they have. So we break it into a few different categories, the first being compensation. So some of the concerns that were brought up were the starting salaries for those entry-level positions. Some folks felt that those were really low. It was also mentioned that there was compression between new and tenured employees as well as between employees and supervisors. There were some talks about the merit pay incentive. And then also it was requested more communication regarding how that starting pay for new employees was determined. As far as classification concerns go, it was mentioned that some classifications are very generic and didn't really accurately describe the roles and the responsibilities of the position. It was requested that job descriptions, those really needed to be updated because they also did not include the roles and responsibilities. And it was mentioned that there was some limited career progression with some classifications. So some of the classification have the tiers, the levels 1, 2, 3, whereas others did not. So those were all things as far as compensation and classification goes. The next thing we asked about were benefits. Now, in this survey, we were able to actually give you some hard data here. So almost 70% of the survey respondents indicated that they were satisfied or very satisfied with their benefit offerings. That's a great thing. So kudos to you guys for keeping up with that and providing some really great benefits. It was mentioned that some employees felt that the family plan premium was a bit costly. Folks also mentioned that they would like the option to sell back sick time as a way to encourage employees to not abuse that sick leave. And then it was mentioned they would also like some more investment options, such as a Roth IRA or a deferred compensation plan. Now, after all of the outreach was conducted, it was actually found that some of the things that were mentioned are things that are already being offered. So, we would recommend that just more communication regarding these things, such as the investment option, since that is something that you guys are currently offering.
What would be a reason someone would want, I'm here. What would be a reason someone would want a 401k compared to the plan that they have? What was the reason given there?
Honestly, some folks just don't like FRS. But as far as like particular reasons.
Is there a reason that someone would want that that makes,
I don't think they understand the system.
They may not understand the system because
because
with
FRS is a better
there
plan.
There is an investment option as well as the pension.
Do we have anybody?
FRS has an option like that. You can do it. They have a 401k
Self-directed.
or the defined pension.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the next phase of our study was the job assessment tool. This was released in December. So this is where we ask all employees to complete a job assessment tool, which allows us to go in and analyze every single position at the individual level. So while it is not a review of the employee by any means, but rather their specific position. So this allowed employees to provide feedback on the roles and their responsibilities of their position, how much education and experience they felt should be required of the position, any licenses or certifications that should be required or preferred, as well as the varying levels of complexity, leadership, decision-making, relationship, and working conditions of their position. So they were able to provide feedback on those 5 job factors as well. So once employees completed their job assessment tool, then it went over to supervisors. Supervisors they were asked to go in and review it to make sure the information was accurate. And then, of course, Evergreen, we reviewed it, and we score these assessments based on those 5 factors. So the level of leadership within the organization, the working conditions of the position, the complexity of the position, the decision-making authority, and the relationship of the position within the organization. So once we score that, we assign a numerical value, and it allows us to create a sort of hierarchy of classifications. So once this is done, then we review it with HR to make sure that we got it right. We want to make sure that that internal equity is there, so that positions that do have similar leadership, working conditions, complexity, decision-making, and relationships are being paid similarly, or rather in the similar pay grades. So moving on from the job assessment tool, we're going to sit that on the back burner just a little bit. We started our market salary survey. So when we're talking about market salary survey, I want to make sure that we all know that when we're doing this, we are comparing ranges. So your current ranges, we are comparing those to your peers. So you can see on the screen here, we solicited data from 17 peers, and this was a good variety of peers. So we wanted, obviously, to make sure that we are including your competition. Those folks that you are losing employees to or potentially losing employees to. But then we also wanted to include peers that had a similar population, similar government style, similar departments, service offerings, things like that. So you're going to see peers from all the way from the Panhandle to South Florida. Now, I wanted to also point out that all salary information that is gathered from these peers is adjusted for cost of living. So we know that South Florida cost of living is probably a lot higher than Brevard County. On the other hand, in the Panhandle, it's a lot lower than here. So we wanted to make sure that that adjustment was made so that it is accurate. So in our market salary survey, there were 70 classifications used as benchmarks. We collected approximately 865 data points, and we did finalize those results in March of 2023. So on average, when we're looking at the ranges, at the 50th percentile of the market, the city was about 9.8% below at the minimum, 11.1% below at the midpoint, and 11.5% below at the max. So once again, this is the ranges. If we go back to when we were looking at the assessment of current conditions, we can see that most of your employees are making above the midpoint. So that tells us that you guys are increasing salaries, but those ranges hadn't been, we know that they hadn't been touched in about 4 years, so since the last one is done. So that's why on the market, it shows that you are 11.1% below. That doesn't mean your employees' salaries are that much below. So this is just ranges here. So the other part of the market was the benefits. Overall, we found that the city appeared to be in alignment with the market. You guys have a great benefit package, and it was very, if not a little bit better than some of your peers. It was just on par. You guys are covering a larger percentage of health insurance costs with lower deductibles. One thing that we looked at in particular based on feedback or based on comments from the outreach was the family plan. So it was found that the city of West Melbourne is paying about 76% of the employee premium, whereas peers are only paying about 52%. So to give that in some numbers, you guys are paying, or your family plans are on average around $400-ish. Peers are about $700. So you guys are covering a significantly more a larger portion of that for employees. It was also found that your dental and vision plans were costing less for employees. West Melbourne was contributing a higher percentage to retirement. Not all peers are on FRS, the Florida Retirement System. They have private plans. So that was a nice finding that you guys are contributing more. And then as far as the flexible work schedule, because that's the hot topic these days, it was found that what you guys are currently offering and doing is very similar to what peers are doing. Most peers, it's dependent upon the department or the supervisor's approval, just like what you guys are currently doing. So moving forward, whenever we were going into looking at how do we want to update the plan, we wanted to base it on market results at the 50th percentile. So that is right in the middle of all of your peers, making sure that you guys are competitive with the market. 50th percentile is extremely common in the public sector. It's very rare that we see folks go above 50th percentile because we want to be fiscally responsible. We also wanted to make sure that we were providing you consistency in the structure, including the ranges. In the prior plan, the range spreads were staggered a bit. So at the entry-level positions, there was a 50% range spread. Mid-level positions was 55%, and your management executive levels were 60%. So range spreads, think of it, the wider the range spread, the more earning potential. So we wanted to streamline that. Yes, sir.
Didn't you tell me during our meeting that we range typically between 50th percentile and 70th?
So best practice
right.
is 50 to 70% range spread.
Okay, thank you. Just want to clarify.
And then the other consideration was we wanted to maintain the same system that you guys currently have, where you have all of your general employees on one plan. So on the screen, we now have the proposed salary plan. We have 17 grades, and that minimum does start at $15.50 an hour. You have a consistent range spread of 55%. Based on the market results, your peers' average range spread was 54%. So 55% is putting you right on par, if not just a slightly more than your peers. And then you have a consistent grade progression of 10%. So that means that there is 10% increase from one grade to the next. So this plan will allow you provide flexibility if you do need to create some additional classifications for career progression or tiered positions. You have that space moving forward. So if you did need to create more. So as far as implementation goes, we are recommending that you do the move to market in a 3-tier system with a 2% minimum percentage adjustment. So what this means is we are looking at your employees' salaries, where they currently are in relation to their current ranges midpoint. So we call that compa ratio. So what is their current compa ratio? Now, based on their length of tenure with the city, then we would break that out a little bit further. So if they have been with the city between 1 and 3 years, we would take that compa ratio percentage and add 5 percentage points to it. Okay, and then tier it down, or it would decrease as you get closer to the midpoint. If the employee has been with the city for 3 to 7 years, that goes to 6% and then tapers down. And then anything over 7 years would start at 7% and then taper down. So this is going to allow your employees to get closer to that midpoint in the new ranges. So any employee that is currently at midpoint or above midpoint would also receive an increase of 2%. So this is going to, as you can see on the screen, as an annual cost is $165,270. However, that is based on 12 months. You guys are doing a mid-year implementation, so it's going to be about half that much. All employees would receive some sort of adjustment. It's an average adjustment of about $2,000 per employee, and then an average percentage of 3.99. So keyword is average, because we were looking at internal equity. We're looking at moving some positions based on the market. So some folks may only get 2%, some may get 8%. So that is just an average. Okay, so as far as our recommendations go, many of these things on this screen are going to be things that we as Evergreen will do for you. So the first is to revise the titles of those generic classifications to better reflect the job duties, which is what we have done. That is in, I believe it's Chapter 6 of your final report. And then another recommendation would be to create those additional classifications for career progression where or when needed. So we have provided room in the plan for you to create those additional classifications. We also recommend revising the job descriptions to include the updated classification information provided in the job assessment tool, which is something that we are doing. We're working on now for you. But we do recommend that you review those job descriptions annually for accuracy. So a great time to do that is whenever you're doing your evaluations. Go ahead and have your employees look over their job descriptions and make sure that they're accurate. We also obviously recommend that you implement this new pay plan for your general employees. We've already slotted the classifications into the plan for you and came up with a transition method. That was the move to market, or a 2% minimum. Now, as far as things that we would recommend you guys do moving forward, conduct those small-scale salary reviews as needed. If you have positions that are hard to fill, have a high turnover rate, you're just having issues, go out to your peers and say, okay, what are these peers paying for this position? Let's make sure that we're still in alignment with the market. The market changes. We know with inflation things go up, so we just need to make sure that you are being competitive with those positions that are hard to fill. We do recommend that you conduct one of these comprehensive classification and compensation studies every 3 to 5 years. You guys have done great with that. You're right at about the 4.5-year mark, so great job on that. And then review and revise as appropriate the existing pay plan practice guidelines, including those for determining the salaries for newly hired employees, progressing employee salaries through the pay plans, and determining pay increases for employees who have been promoted to a different classification. You want to make sure that you are consistent, equitable for all of your employees. And in this, since this is essentially step 1, step 2 will be hopefully in October to increase that minimum a bit further. You do also want to make sure that you are adjusting your ranges whenever you do adjust that minimum. So you don't want to create additional compression by not adjusting. So once you adjust to the 16 or whatever you decide to adjust to, you also just want to make those changes. These are all things that we are going to help you with. You guys have us for a year, and we are more than happy to help you with any technical assistance, questions as they arise, anything like that. So as far as our next step, we're going to finish updating those job descriptions, and we are going to provide training to HR on plan management, and that includes not only slotting of new positions, how to score them based on our job assessment tool, but also just in general the plan management. So whenever you do change the minimum, we will show you how to additionally change all of the other grades as well. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, we have Mr. Ditmore, you're up first.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, since we all had a briefing on this and had plenty of time to talk, I'm just going to go ahead and make the motion that we accept the classification and compensation study as presented by Evergreen Solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
I'll second, and I have a bunch of questions.
Okay, you're up first then. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so let's go back to the 50% tile with peers. I know I brought up at the meeting that puts us at average with our peers. I kind of feel like that we need to be attractive to acquire more employees, and I would like to see the numbers to be at the 60% level as opposed to the 50% level. I know you said there's a range between 50 and 70%, and this just affects the looks of the ranges, not necessarily the pay status.
So
when
we're talking about this 50th percentile, that's totally separate from your range spreads. So this 50th percentile is talking about looking at your peers. So say, for example, you have 10 peers. At the 50th percentile, you would have 10 behind you and 10 in front of you. Now,
So
with
when
that,
you were,
We're at 55.
what's that?
We're at 55.
When you were comparing us to the other cities, what you put us at the mid-range there as well, correct? Of what you made us comparison to what they were paying their employees. Is that?
right, so we were comparing your current ranges to their current ranges.
And with this increase, you increased us to right about where they're at, correct?
So whenever we are looking at placing classifications into a grade, we're looking at that midpoint. So when we, I said set this JAT scores to the side, this is where those come in. So whenever we collect, we have those numerical values assigned to the each classification. When we bring in the market data, we conduct what we call a regression analysis, and that gives us an approximate midpoint of what would be market for that classification.
What terminology did you use there if it wasn't I thought that's where you were talking about the 50 percentile. You put us in at the same level as them.
So the 50th percentile is just,
I realized that was something different, but when you compared us to the other cities, what was the terminology used there?
we're comparing your ranges to the others, so
Right.
there's no percentile at that point that we're comparing to.
Okay, so for us to get, I know with our ranges, we kind of fell behind because we didn't increase with the cost of living, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so how do we put our ranges so we're a little bit above everybody else and not,
Great question.
Right there.
So whenever you do go to whatever you move to in October, by adjusting the rest of your ranges, that's essentially going to place you above the 50th percentile. So, I mean, we could go back and take a look at what some of those midpoints would be for some positions, but that's how you determine your market position is based on your.
well, I was correct thinking 50th percentile. That puts us right with everybody else, and is that what you're saying?
50th percentile, think of it as a bell curve.
Okay.
Okay? So when we're talking about 50th percentile in this case, we're talking about where you want to be in regard to your peers. Okay? So at the 50th percentile, you're saying we want to be in
Maybe that's where I'm getting confused. When you talk about our peers, are you talking about who we're comparing it to in other cities?
yes,
Or-
that
Okay,
period is
so
17.
we're in the middle of where everybody else is at. So if we want to be a little bit above in the 60th range, you can give us the numbers for that, right?
I can give you the market midpoints for what that would look like, yes.
I would like to see those numbers to see if it's not a whole lot more. I would rather attract people than they say, and I kind of would like to have that revolve around Brevard County cities. I know you tried to do that in the thing, you said you didn't have enough comparisons,
Data.
but I'd kind of like to be a little bit above. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I want to attract employees here. I don't want them to say, oh, well, they're on par with everybody else. I'll, go somewhere else.
Absolutely. And whenever you do adjust that minimum, by adjusting the minimum, you would also be adjusting the rest of your ranges, so that is going to shift your midpoint higher, thus creating or making it so that you are more than the 50th. You may be more toward the 60th percentile.
Would you recommend a wider spread on the range at that point or not?
So the range spread is going, that's the employee's earning potential. So
Correct, I know.
based on market, where market is right now, it was 54% for your peers, so I think at 55%, you're at a good starting point. You can always go back and readdress the range spread of your pay plans if you see that it is, maybe you guys do want to increase that maximum again. But I think where you are at 55% is right on par for the market here, or in the state, the ones that we compared you guys to. As long as you're not, I would never recommend anything less than 50% or probably even greater than 70%, because then you just have a lot of room. And
Takes
it's hard
too long to get there.
Yeah. It's better to add a little bit as you go, because it's harder to take it away than it is to give.
Okay, so you'll get those numbers back to us?
Absolutely.
Okay. I was happy to see that we had you said a 92 point would change on the response back from the job personnel, participation analysis, right? I was happy to see that. So
That is-
kudos to our staff for coming back with that. I'm happy to see that we're paying more with our benefit packages. That's a plus for drawing people into the city. So that was great. We did increase levels of the family plan this past year and added a value plan, so that made it a little bit easier for people to get into the family plan. So that was an added plus. I wanted to point that out. How do these increases, city manager, will that affect the review period? What your review period's when, and if we're increasing their salaries now by at least 2%, is that going to affect the review coming up?
Yeah, so we'll be taking a look as we put the budget together. As we put the number moving forward, this is, we consider this a one-time market adjustment. And then as you come into October, your review period is from, October of last year to October of this year, and then as it rolls into the new budget. And so last year we had up to 4% merit or performance review based. I think it's the same word, but performance review based up to 4% last year. We're looking to do something similar to that this year in the budget.
So the previous city manager had a little bit of a complicated formula where he had cost of living and performance review and getting to the midpoint, and
A four-tiered approach.
there was something
yes.
else involved in there. Are you planning on using the same formula, or are you gonna?
So last year I did a 2-point process last time and evaluate whether the 2-point is enough. Big fan of the performance review process. I do think employees that perform well do appreciate that more than a COLA jump. But I never say I'll never use a 4-tiered approach. Right now I'm at a 2-tiered approach.
Well, the 3-tier approach we're going to use in this system is going to bring everybody up to almost midpoint anyhow, correct? Is that?
No.
It will help us get to midpoint. I guess that's the.
It's progressing your employees' salaries based on tenure, because midpoint is, whenever we think of midpoint, that's what we think of market. Like, this is the going rate for that position for someone who is proficient, have the, the years of experience. We typically think of a career as around 30 years, right? So let's just say, for simple terms, midpoint would be someone that has about 15 years of experience. So that, and performance review that's going to be completely separate from this tier.
But your 3-phase thing gets them to where they should be in their amount of years
It is
in employment.
one way
correct?
to transition employees over into the new plan. We always recommend that you go through and make some personnel adjustments if needed.
So that brings me back to that formula where we were desperately trying to get people to midpoint, and people were getting a lot higher raises to get them to that point. So we're not.
So I have a 2-part process that I used last year and plan to continue to use in the future. The previous administration had 4-point process.
So we talked about the ranges increasing with the cost of living increases. Are you going to have a static cost of living increase per year, and that's how much the raises are going to increase? That way we don't fall into the same problem as falling behind like we did this from the last study.
Yeah, I think they're two different items. I think if we could look at ranges being a separate, we have our range chart, which we had up here just a second ago. We have our range chart. That is something that we can annually at budget time adjust for and pick a CPI. I'm not suggesting one tonight. I'm just saying we can find a CPI closely related to labor and potentially each year adjust it based on that CPI, which will take care of the range.
So it doesn't make sense to just say it's going to be 2% each year. It's
Correct. We want to use it off a labor-related CPI in order to keep the ranges. I think one of the things that we just missed the mark on a little bit here the last couple of years with our current ranges is we hadn't adjusted them in so long that we just kept eliminating the lower ones because we kept raising the minimum wage. And so it caused that compression. And then when the annual reviews came, you were in a position where you had to do performance-based reviews and then have to adjust for compression.
We failed to raise the whole range instead of just, we were just raising the bottom.
We were raising
Right.
people and the bottom, but we never raised the top.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Adams, you're next.
Sorry, thought that was on. I appreciate the time you took to meet with each of us one-on-one. I did ask a majority of my questions at that point, which I did find, City Manager, that the firm was great. You guys had lots of in-depth responses to my questions, and I felt like I got a good response in terms of HR with kind of our next steps in general. I am excited to see just some brainstorming in terms of communication with employees, because I think we have some great things at the city that have been highlighted in this report, and I think sometimes you don't know what you don't know, or you don't know, always what's in there, especially going from onboarding to being a long-term employee. There are things that you forget. But overall, I thought it was a very well-done report, so I appreciate the time, and as well as staff's input. I think it gave us a really good snapshot of the city with staff moving forward. In terms of the ranges that you gave, listening to Deputy Mayor Frampus ask a couple questions regarding that range, I just wanted to clarify, that is for pay only, correct? That's not incorporating the value that the city gives in terms of the benefits, or that does?
It does not, no, those are your base salaries.
Okay, that's what I understood them to be. I just wasn't sure, since benefits, especially for our employees, is a significant part of that package. In terms of creating that tiered system that you had talked about, in terms of a level 1, level 2, things like that for that progression plan, is that something, and I don't necessarily know if you can answer it or if it's more of a city manager question, but is that something that you believe is going to be needed either now or in the future based on the size of our staff? Because there are some positions that we don't have, 2 or 3 people in that department. Are we going to need that in the future, or is this only going to be needed as a tiered system for the departments that are larger, where we might see a level 1, a level 2, and 3?
Yeah, great question. I think right now, as you guys, how it currently stands, I feel like your career progression, there is career progression there. Just because you are, one position, entry-level position, doesn't mean that you're going to remain that. You guys tend to hire from within. So maybe as you grow and have, bring on more staff, maybe that those level 1, 2, 3s in other departments may be needed. But that's something that, I would recommend looking at, 3, 4, 5 years down the road and see if you need it at that time. But I think right now what you guys currently have is working. I would obviously recommend that you just communicate those career paths to folks, because I think with your hiring from within, that's wonderful. And, perhaps employees don't really realize that there is that pathway that you guys have.
So, Mr. Rohde, do we have a current progression plan map for employees that might say, if your structure where your department is, if you don't have a desire to go higher in that department, knowing how we've hired in the past with the city, do we have ideas for this employee with these skills or certification may wish to transfer over to a different department and this is where they could go, or things like that, so employees are more informed of their options rather than always vertically?
Yeah, since just in my time here, we've had several employees apply for and receive for the internal postings out of their department to different departments. So I don't think that's a secret, and that process seems to be working very well. As far as a formalized process for progression movement, that's typically handled during the performance review process. We ask employees what their desire is. We have an education reimbursement that's, surprisingly is used by some, but not is used probably by as many as could. So we have those options, and that's when those conversations happen if people are looking to to advance their career, whether it's in that department or in a different department. So I don't know that it's a formal piece of paper that we can hand to somebody in each department, but it's certainly a process, and it's working very well. We, just in my time here, I could probably think of 5 employees that have applied for internally posted positions before and were filled before we weren't able to fill, and then went out to the public for them. So,
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bentley?
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to address something that Mr. Frampus commented on. I think I would not support a increase to the range spread. I don't think any of us would. But I think what Mr. Rohde is asking us to also maybe consider implementing is some sort of a market adjustment, which will affect that spread, but will also affect the midpoint every year.
I just asked about the spread. I want to know.
Right.
Where we
Midpoint.
But if,
up with the other cities.
right, I think actually we're a little bit ahead once you implement all this from most cities. Not, I mean, the sheriff's side I think is still ahead of us, but I think we're ahead of a lot of the others. But with Mr. Rohde's plan to do some kind of a market-based adjustment based on some index, that'll move the midpoint and all the points basically every year and keep us from doing what we just did. And so I think that's going to accomplish what you're asking for, just if we approve him to move that automatically, because I don't know that we were remiss or what. I think we actually made a conscious decision not to do that last time, but I don't know that it was the right decision, because we are right back in a position that we were in just a few years ago. And one thing I have to mention, I just have to. You've got a plan that you're putting in place to put everybody where you believe they belong. Yes, if we follow your plan.
Yeah, so the implementation, it looks at their tenure, and typically when we're looking at midpoint.
I'm just talking in general. If we adopt what you guys are recommending, you think we'll be doing the right thing and being in a position that we should be in to be competitive.
Yes.
Where I struggle, I don't know if I struggle is the right word, but where I kind of find odd is you have 36 employees that your own system said you don't need to do anything with them. They're fair, they're right where they should be. Yet you're recommending that we do a 2% adjustment just to be kind, I guess would be the word, because the numbers don't prove out doing that. Fair?
So the 2% came with discussions, internal discussions. This implementation, typically it would be just to those that are below the midpoint.
I know, but the 2% is not based upon your plan that you put in place and your recommendation that you put in place, because we wouldn't be touching those 36 people based on if we were trying to do your plan.
Correct.
right, but it also does help with compression.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, I think we're trying to be nice to these 30, whoever, I don't even know who they are, but these 36 employees, but if we implemented the plan that you recommended, they would not have been included, except for he's choosing to use this tool for kind of something else to leave compression, basically.
Right, because we'd either have to solve compression with this plan implementation or October 1st,
All right.
which is how you get to a 4-tiered pay system.
So do you believe this 2% to these 36 folks is going to eliminate most of the compression?
It's going to help. It's going to help greatly, especially for the people who have come up in the last 2 years, closer and closer to that midpoint. If you were just happen to be at the midpoint or a little bit over, now the people below you have come right into your same hourly wage.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. One of the things that we all talk about is starting pay and entry-level positions that are low paid, and it doesn't seem like we're doing a whole lot for those to attract some of the lower echelons, because I don't know if we're worried about compression or what. So how do we address that? The lower echelons getting 2% of their salary is a lot different than 2% of the department heads kind of thing.
So that's going to be where that recommendation about reviewing and revising your procedures go, your personnel procedures. You want to make sure that whenever you are bringing someone in, that you are taking into account all of the things. So as far as, are you speaking more on recruiting Those-
Yeah, that would be one thing. I mean, we can talk about, like, the building department, for instance, some other departments too, but building department, we can't fill those positions. So nothing you have that I read in here addresses that.
So our scope of work was strictly looking at the pay plans and the benefits. So that was not, no, it was not looked at. It was not in our scope of work.
Was not looked at, okay. Also, you have new classifications. I guess that means a new title. And it says you have the police captain to the police commander and the custodian to the facilities technician. Does that include raises or just titles?
So what you're looking at right now are just classification revisions.
So it's not a raise, it's just a different name for the position? Okay. Okay, and have we eliminated all police captains now and calling those commanders?
Yes.
That was a yes? Okay. All right, so again, I would like to know what we're doing, maybe it's internal, whether it's bonuses or what we need to do to attract some of these empty slots. I mean,
That would be an internal.
It's a recruitment effort.
recruitment effort, yeah, because we have a lot of people here that's been here for many, many years and are not going anyplace. But some of those positions that we need to attract and retain at the lower level, because we don't want to just be open door and keep training people and they leave. So do we have a plan in place for that?
So that is one of the things that we're working on right now. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Bentley?
Hey, Mayor. Hopefully the recommendations that you put forward are reflecting kind of what the mayor is saying, and that you're making adjustments to those people in hard positions.
Yes, they were.
I mean, hopefully that's what's going on. One thing I didn't understand is I didn't understand the custodian to technician. Maybe you could explain that to me, because that made no sense at all.
So in the
to me.
job assessment tool, it was found that your custodian, that position is doing more than just cleaning. They're also doing some light maintenance work, whether it's painting, fixing something. So.
And that would raise it to a technician, painting?
No, it's the same pay grade.
I don't think
It's
so.
just redefining the role to, whenever you think of custodian, you typically only think of cleaning. So whenever you're advertising for that, you're saying, hey, we're hiring a custodian. You don't want someone coming in thinking they're just going to be sweeping floors whenever they're really going to be painting, changing light bulbs, maybe fixing a door, something.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like smoke and mirrors.
Well, depending on how you answer these questions, people that understand how to answer the questions that you ask can really sway these surveys. I mean, I've seen people do it my whole life, right? Because they knew supervision really raises your responsibility level if you're supervising people. And if people know to bring that up during their interview with you, it can actually impact these things. But my question, you had one that was, I thought you said police commander that you're recommending instead of police chief, and I thought,
No,
No, sir. No, police captain to police commander.
okay, so I
Just a
misunderstood.
name
I was going to say,
change.
why in the world that wouldn't work? Okay.
No, sir.
So I misread
And
that one.
just to clarify, the information that was put forth in the job assessment tool was reviewed by supervisors
I know.
to make sure that it was accurate.
Right. Thank you.
Are we going to see the new police structure someday? Because
That'll be the police chief, yes?
I'll answer that to the city manager. I mean, we're changing positions, but I don't know.
Sure,
We haven't seen who answers to whom or in that department.
So one of the changes that we're recommending in this is taking the 2 police captain positions and creating a police commander position,
Oh, so when,
which
okay.
which has been filled, which
Which is what?
Commander Page. So
I didn't hear what you said.
Commander Page.
Okay. Yeah, that's one, right? Okay. Okay, I thought we were trying to eliminate or spread some of that around, and instead of.
Made it one,
Say that again?
took 2 captains, made it into one.
Okay. So we only have one commander, no captains. Okay.
1 commander.
Okay.
How many captains you have left? 2 or?
None.
0 captains.
None.
Like that, we had 2 captains and we created 1 commander position.
Yeah. All right. All right. Anything else that you, okay. We have anything else? Okay. Yes, there is. Okay. Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Ditmore, second from Mr. Frampus. Mr. Ditmore,
No, I just was the next motion.
you already did. Okay. Okay, all those in favor, signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. That's a great presentation and great work.
Well, we have
Yeah,
other.
that was for the, okay.
4 motions.
Oh, it's just combine them into one. Okay. So that was to accept the classification as he did. So, Ms. Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2023-05 to amend the budget to include the move to market solution as proposed by our results. And do we have to do these, City Manager, one at a time, or can we roll them all in?
Depends. Let's do them one at a time.
We can do them one at a time. I was just checking. Thank you.
Mr. Ditmore? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes without opposition. Ms. Young, you're up next.
Thank you. I'll make the motion to adopt resolution number 2023-06, effectuating the proposed pay plan effective May 14th, 2023.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 7-0. Deputy Mayor, you're up next.
Make a motion, we adopt resolution number 2023-07 as written.
Second, Rose. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 7-0. All right. Thank you for participating, everyone. Thank you. Next up, we have the management reports, 2022 analysis of fire services alternatives follow-up.
So just wanted to, we had talked in our Saturday work session, and several questions were generated, and wanted to just follow up with the group as far as what staff wanted to just report some things, and then if any other elected officials had any updates, and then kind of schedule the next action plan based on that. So real briefly, one of the items tasked was to reach out to the county and talk about negotiation and kind of dovetail together the option of talking about building a facility for ourselves for the future, but then leasing it to them in the interim. And those conversations went slow, but eventually progressed. And I do have a meeting on the books next week with the county emergency government manager and the fire chief. The emergency government manager is the department head, and the chief works for him. So the two people to discuss that, we're going to sit down and take a look at that option and see if we can get some momentum going on that. The city attorney did put in several points that I won't read for him, but I think kind of outline the question that was raised as to MSTU fire service fees, when we can implement them and which ones we can roll out. And so I think happy to try to answer the questions. I'm pretty familiar with it, but obviously the city attorney is not present this evening. Put together a budget. You know, one of the questions was kind of hey, let's take a look at our neighboring communities. Some of them happen to have kind of a similar size and footprint. Let's take a look at their annual budget. Let's take a look at their capital spend. Let's take a look at their population. Let's take a look at how that breaks down per capita. And so we did that for 5 communities that we think are around us and similar, obviously different sizes, but hopefully can extrapolate some of the pertinent information: Melbourne, Palm Bay, Rockledge, Cocoa Beach. I think no surprise to anybody who's familiar with police and fire budgets, the numbers, the per capita numbers are all over the place. There's just not a one, our police department and our needs don't, you just can't pick another community our exact same size and plop, the same structure, the same equipment, the same facilities. And so I think one of the things to take away from that per capita is probably averaging them gets us a good number to work off of, but also be aware of the different annual capital that each of these departments has put into their operating. One of these departments might just be replacing one truck. Another department might be doing an upgrade to a whole facility. And so the capital, we're gonna catch each year, if we review this, we're gonna catch different counterpart municipalities in different capital cycles. So really just looking at the operating is kind of an apples to apples as opposed to capital. And so that was our budget update. And I think that covered all of, we talked about ISO ratings. As we know, Melbourne is very proud of the highest ISO rating in the area. Palm Bay and Rockledge are both at the lower rate. I'm still a little confused with the ISO rating. Some communities talk about a 1 through 4 scale, and then other communities talk about a 1 through 10 scale. And so, Rockledge said they were a 4 out of 10, and I don't quite know what that's relevant to, other than I know that the scaling system, they acknowledge that they are, all the city managers acknowledge that they weren't as high as Melbourne, that Melbourne does have the high ISO rating in the area right now.
Isn't the scale 1 through 10? I mean, that's everything I read on ISO. It was 1 through 10.
Yeah, on Melbourne's site, they talk about it's a 1 through 4, and they've worked their way up to a 1. And so that's what kind of confused me, this 1 by 4. But obviously, we know Melbourne is at the highest rating, and the other communities are substantially lower. So the county being, regionalized and lower in some areas that don't have water, it's water service, it's training, it's redundancy in trucks, it's all kinds of things that go into the fact of the ISO rating. So,
Mr. Ditmore, you're up first.
Thank you, Mayor. Since the city manager has not had an opportunity to get all the information from the county, I'd like to make a motion that we table this meeting to the next, table this discussion until our next regular scheduled meeting. That way he'll be able to bring back the information from the county, and we can make a more informed decision.
Second. A motion to table is non-debatable, right? So all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? We will table this until the appropriate time.
So,
all right.
So obviously the city attorney is not present for the next item. So I don't know if you want to table that item as well. I had a.
Not going to call in? No, I'm just kidding. For those that don't realize, he's at the hospital with his wife. They're expecting a new baby. So.
What's the next item?
The America's Best
Value briefing.
Cliff, you want to take a shot at that?
Sorry, I got to go back.
I could, but it probably wouldn't be very beneficial to me.
Okay. I just want to hear your voice tonight. You're doing a heck of a job over there.
Thank you so much.
All right. So we'll look forward to ABVI. Okay. City Council reports. Deputy Mayor, you're up first.
Thank you, Mayor. Correct me if I'm wrong, City Manager, but wasn't the fire study supposed to be the second meeting in May when we had it? I thought that was what we discussed at the last, wasn't?
I did recall that, but our city clerk keeps dubious notes and confirmed that it was scheduled for the first meeting in May. So
Okay.
But my memory is not what it used to be either.
You weren't here. So I attended the Florida League of Cities CMO 2 class over the weekend, well, Friday and Saturday. Very good class. I attended it with 4 other of the representatives up here, and happy to go through it. We learned some stuff we didn't know before, or I did anyhow, and This morning, I attended a class at the Melbourne Chamber on how to address negative reviews and improve customer service, and that was a very good class, and it was emceed by a young fellow named Joshua Adams, so he did a very good job as well at the class. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ditmore?
Thank you, Mayor. I also attended the emo class. It was very informative. It's a kind of an opportunity to really shore up some things. I mean, I kind of wish I would have had that class probably about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. It'd probably been more helpful. I did have my anniversary actually yesterday, my 5th year on council. It was May 1st of 2018. Yeah, it's actually completed 5 years. I did not get my gift, and I don't. Am I getting a ring or something? I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to get. But anyways, a plaque maybe. Oh no, I'm not the one that gets plaques. Never mind. Anyways, did have an opportunity to go down to the town council in Malabar to see the joint county commission meeting with the town of Malabar. It was very interesting, and they were able to resolve their issues down there. With the lawsuit that they had that was kind of going on. So I always try to tell people, and especially as an HOA president, try to avoid these type of conflicts which go to litigation. And then, no offense, Cliff, but I think the attorneys tend to the only ones that tend to profit off of these things. So after it was all said and done, just sitting down, having a meeting of the minds across from each other, got that issue resolved, and I watched it, and they kept saying, we're so close, we're so close. They kept going back and forth, and finally said, we got this resolved. And it was just a little bit, well, hey, we'll take the gates down. We'll start letting the citizens start to use the park again. Okay, if you do that, then, well, don't charge us fees for removing some trees. And it was kind of almost like there was a tit for tat thing going on back and forth. It was really not productive, I think, back in the day. But this meeting was productive. They were able to get that solved. And I thought when I saw this and when it wrapped up this is government, how government should work. And it did work at the time. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Good report. Councilmember Bentley.
Thank you, Mayor. I did read, I'm sure everybody did, the attorney's report. And actually, I found it very informative, and it read well, and it let me know the status on things that are upgoing. So if you're not reading that, because I don't always read it, I will now after I read this, and I was like, wow, that was very informative, and I learned a lot. So if you're not, take a look at it. He's actually, I think, doing a good job on that. I would also mention that we have Farm Share for those who want to attend on Friday here at the Field of Dreams, and we'll be handing out food to those who need it. So if you can come out, you're welcome to come out and help us. I think I don't know what time it starts at 9 formally, but if you're going to help get things ready, it's around 7:30.
7, they ask for volunteers to show up, but you can arrive anywhere between 7 and 8:30 for volunteers.
So it's a great event, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of folks from West Melbourne here. And we always give out all the food, so it's a really nice event. And then just mention that next Monday night we have the Space Coast League of Cities for those who would like to attend. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Young, you're up next.
Thank you, Mayor. I also was away over the weekend to the IEMO 2 class, and after going through that for the 2-day or day and a half, it was very interesting. It was very nice to have a chance to talk to some of the people from the other cities, and the more I talked to them and the more I heard them talk in general at the meeting regarding their councils, the more I appreciate each and every one of you sitting here. I'm so glad. I'm so thrilled to be in West Melbourne, and with the staff that we have, the city manager, city attorney, the police department that we have, our public works and everything we have. I'm so grateful to live here. I never want to move anywhere else after being at that meeting. So the class was very, very helpful. Drove back in absolutely pouring rain. No hail, but you couldn't even see where you were going. But I'm very grateful to be home. I don't have any reports for any of my other meetings yet. It's too early in the month. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mayor. I did not attend the emo. Actually, I already had attended it, and it was an excellent program, so thank you for that. on the 25th, I attended the Melbourne morning session of a business update with the county manager. Extremely informative information. The city manager was also in attendance, so he may correct me if I've got anything wrong here, but it's impressive to hear what's going on in the county when you look at, especially integrated with all the different roads and things of that sort. But he had mentioned that, tourism is up 24%, which hopefully we're appreciating some of that benefit with the hotels. Mentioned the 383 Sorrel projects. That's the, Save Our Indian River Lagoon projects, and how backlogged they are in those projects. So it's a huge undertaking in that regard. They were mentioning the, he's a wealth of knowledge. So mentioned about the turtle season and being from November to April, and I didn't realize there were 38,000 turtle nest in this 11-mile span that we have here in this sanctuary. So it is a huge event with 38,000 nests. But I guess that's not 38,000 turtles because they make multiple nests. Lifeguards are shortage like anything else with resources, but the piece that I thought was important that I appreciate was the fact that they're taking a concerted effort in resurfacing a lot of our roads, and I'm hoping that we get some benefit of that here in our area, because they did mention the 192 facelift. So I think that was actually, I think there was an applause going on in the room at the time. I also attended today the realtors group, which spoke very openly about all of the Melbourne mayor and the Palm Bay mayor were there providing some updates to the realtors, and I thought it would be great to kind of get a sense of what are the issues out there surrounding our bookends, and a lot of same issues that we're facing. And it was the issues of resurfacing roads and congestion and development, and but for the most part it was a very upbeat meeting today. It's nothing like what we're going to hear at the Melbourne or at the breakfast with the mayors, I'm sure. And then I do want to give accolades to the chief on the law enforcement initiative that he's doing. I'm looking forward to attending that next week, May 11th, for the elders and the what's it actually called, the program, Law Enforcement Together with Seniors. So thank you.
Yeah, very good. All right, Councilmember Adams, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, for clarification, is that program only open to seniors?
No, there's no age requirement. It'll be tailored towards the more experienced crowd.
Fabulous, thank you.
You can't go, you're too young.
I was just checking. So I was the last in our group before as well this past weekend to attend EMO 2. As it was stated, very informational class, a lot to take in, but I do agree with Councilwoman Young. It gave you a certain appreciation, as if I think everyone up here does appreciate our staff and our city leadership and our police department, but I think just hearing from other cities and getting kind of the greater Florida picture of all of the cities, we still have top notch here in West Melbourne, so that was exciting. I did also attend New Life Mission holds an annual informational type session for the community, and so they're a local nonprofit over in Melbourne that has different campuses that serve homeless women with children in our community. It's sort of a residential program, but as they grow, they're looking to address that need that we see not only in pockets, in Melbourne where they're located, but throughout Brevard County. So it's good to see them continue to grow. In terms of the recent storms that we had over the past week, I did ask our city manager to include some information just so residents are more aware and informed, which I think bookend nicely with the upcoming session with the police department in terms of being informed, doing your research on people that may come around and want to do repairs and things like that, just making sure that you have all your ducks in a row, because I know our area was particularly hard hit with those hailstorms, so I think it's important to check in with our residents, make sure everybody's good. And then just two things to keep in mind. This week we have Small Business Week. So if you're out and about, just supporting those local West Melbourne businesses, I think would be great. And as well, so today is Teacher Appreciation Day, but next week will actually be the official Teacher Appreciation Week. If you want to stop by at any of our West Melbourne schools, our teachers just go really above and beyond for our students. So I think recognizing them and trying to give them some just encouragement, I think goes a long way. So that's my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And piggybacking on that, I represented the city of West Melbourne at a school, elementary school appreciation breakfast. If it was breakfast, I'm there. So it was nice. Seriously, all the volunteers they had. And one of the people I met there was one of the shoe companies in town has donated hundreds and hundreds of shoes to the elementary age kids because their feet grow. They just said the feet grow fast and the old shoes really stink, but they take care of that. Also, I attended the police had a fundraiser from Miami to Daytona Beach where the police rode their bikes, different segments, and I was there welcoming them to, when they got to Palm Bay, they left, the next morning they left Palm Bay and went to Titusville and then to Daytona, and that's where they ended. But they had hundreds of police on bikes, and it was really... Police Unity Tour or something like that? It was a fundraiser for the same thing as Cops on the Coop thing, but they all get sponsored and they do different legs of that. It was really amazing how many bikes and people there were and all walks of life there. Very interesting. Also this last weekend, the ham radio P-Cars, Mayor, I attended that with Mr. Bentley and Ms. Young. They got a new location at the fire training facility in Melbourne. So again, when there's emergencies, the ham radio takes over. So that was neat watching and looking at their new facility there. So, and as Ms. Adams said, the hailstorm was second to none around here. A lot of debris, it was just amazing, amazing time. I don't really know how much damage we had. I know there were a lot of roof claims, I understand. I don't know if those will be real or not, but, and a lot of leaves and little limbs and some trees down. Hopefully they're getting cleaned up throughout the community. And I don't know how we're doing for the city as far as, is there any FEMA money? I don't know if we got to that level or not.
I'll follow up with emergency government. I do know the Public Works Department is going to put in the budget a couple of plows for the next hailstorm, just in case we need to push that hail around. But that was reminiscent of up north, that hailstorm.
Yeah, I did get a lot of calls. They said, Mayor Hale Rose, help me out here. So it was, no, it was the real deal. It really was, and I never seen anything like it. But I think, and some schools were getting out at that time, and I don't know if anybody got hurt or not, but it definitely would slice and hurt. All right, any questions for the city manager? I know you've been trying for the last, I don't know, year or so to hire a project manager and building officials, and we're looking for Parks and Rec. So where are we with those?
So the building official retired 2 weeks ago. And
yes.
So we started advertising almost immediately for a building official. So we have not spent the last year looking for a building official. Just to be clear, don't want to make them nervous in retirement. Looking at the reorg with the possibility of moving the Parks Department underneath the Public Works Department, in which case the new rec director would just be in charge of rec services and not parks and rec. So working on that, and then going to get that job ad out. And then we do have an accepted offer for a project manager, and that person is in background. So as soon as we have the background cleared, we'll announce that position.
Thank you. Mr. Bentley?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things I had wanted to mention and I had forgotten. One is to thank the police. They had their cops on a coupe. Is that? I guess that's how you say it. At Chick-fil-A, and I think that was tremendously successful. So that's an annual event that they do that really goes over pretty well. And thank Mr. Rohde for. I called him about this. You know, we were like everybody else inundated with trees and leaves and yada yada, and we ended up taking just our community 140 55-gallon bags of leaves to the repost in West Melbourne, and they processed it all for us. So we had to drive it there. It was like 16 truckloads. But thank you for helping us with that, and they did a great job with it. And so, you know, that's the leaves that are going to go to a good purpose, I guess. And then lastly, mention that I got a call from Representative Fine this morning. We had requested $2.2 million in funds for certain projects this year, which is a total of 4 projects, and they funded 2 of them at about $1.2 million. So thanks for that. Thank you, Mayor.
And that was the biggest project too, right? That funded. Okay, very good. Deputy Mayor Frampus.
So I was also going to ask about the hiring. I'm glad that see that was capital projects, not planning, right? So
Capital projects.
Capital
Yep.
projects. Okay, and you talked about the Parks and Rec being separated. The recreation, as you told me before, when you separated it, it was also going to include some aspects of social media, correct? Is that going to, you're expanding that to include that as well? Because I know we're a little lacking in social media with the city, so.
Right, so looking to modernize that rec angle as far as social media and getting out and working with the community a little bit more. And I think we can add that flexibility to that position versus kind of the day-to-day challenges of taking care of multiple parks and the issues that come up. That person won't have to deal with that. So kind of separating the day-to-day maintenance from the bigger picture.
The mower aspect of it, but I think it's an absolute fantastic idea to bring in more social media and have that, the rec department integrated in with that, since a lot of what we do is, you know, focuses around the recreation and the parks and for our citizens and stuff. So I think
More Instagram posts are in our future.
good to hear that. As far as the RFP for the wastes, has that been completed yet? And when it's completed, I'd like to request a copy of that. And I don't know if anybody else wants it or not, but.
Sure, that'll have to go in the Dropbox. It's a large document. Congratulations to Tom Bradford, put out the Parks Master Plan RFP, and that process is out on the marketplace, doing well with some interest. We are going to go live with our waste hauling RFP on Friday via Demand Star. And so we'll be getting the ads and all the appropriate documents to the paper in order to put that out, and that'll be a 45-day window. And so it is a large document, so we can put it in the Dropbox. If you want it printed, I would check with our city clerk. She would be happy to print you a copy.
Well, I don't have my Dropbox set up yet. Maybe I could talk with Tom and get that.
I know a good IT guy in the room.
I'm guessing that all of our input when we decided to go this route was put into that new RFP, right?
Yeah, so the RFP mirrors a lot of what our past RFP in the counties and Melbourne's. We're looking for 2-time-a-week garbage pickup. We're looking at recycling, what they call automated recycling, and then we're looking at automated yard waste with a bid alt for manual pickup as well. But it will also include unlimited yard waste with the clam, as long as they follow the rules, e-waste, white goods, all of the services that we have now, and then looking at bid alts for holiday service.
So one of my bigger objections was moving away from CPI. Is that still?
So we're CPIU just as we are now with our current contract.
Thank you.
And also, if we can't come to get enough bids, or can we extend the contract with Waste Management? I know you were looking into that.
Yep, so Waste Management, like any waste hauler, our contract ends end of September. They are, like all of them do, will continue at a negotiated price until a new vendor can be up and running. So,
But you can't expect a new vendor to have trucks and pick up yard waste with machinery in
no, there's usually a couple months.
months, maybe a year or so. I mean, you got to get trash. A new company would have to order trash receptacles and.
I did talk to the three major players in the area, and I did leave a message for the fourth, who isn't a player but has bid on other Brevard County services, and all of them are looking at like a 6 to 8 week lead time for the carts, and so they feel that they could be up and running within 6 months.
Okay.
So,
Ms. Young, you're up next.
Question for City Manager. We have vac trucks that go around, and I see them occasionally going around and cleaning out the stormwater drains. So when the storms come, the water goes down clearly, takes out all the trash and debris and that sort of thing. So when all this hail and rain was coming down, I think last week, Wednesday, I was driving down 192 in this. So 192 got flooded really, really quickly. And the main thing I saw, when I still could see, was the drains were so filled with trash that the water was trying to get down, but the trash was just unbelievable in these drains. Now, I realize 192 is maintained by the county. Can we call the county and ask them, can you get your vac trucks out here to clean this up? As we're going into hurricane season, it's only going to get worse. And there's a ton of trash to come out. Is that possible? Do they have vac trucks? I never see them.
happy to reach out, but a lot of the, I was personal witness to a lot of the flooding on 192, and a lot of that flooding came from actually the businesses in the area. Their lots overflowed and then washed into 192 because they're higher. So they actually pushed water into 192. So there was a quite a little river going on several places along 192, and a lot of that, a lot of the trash ultimately got picked up. But when the problem is our catch basins aren't designed to take hail, so it was a partial clogging of the frozen material that got in them and the trash, and so. But happy to reach out to the county and see if they can take a look at make sure those catch basins are real clean.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Adams, you're next.
Thank you. Oh, there we go. Thank you. While I'm excited for the potential of the two projects that Mr. Bentley had brought up that our representative was trying to get into the governor's budget, we did get a communication today asking that if there's no security in those projects being definitely in the budget, as the governor has that, line item veto power. So it was requested if the city could send a letter or two in support of the two projects that we've submitted. If we could get that done, I know it's a short turnaround time to try to get it in front of decision makers up there, but just to express that the city believes that these two projects are worthwhile and that should stay in the budget, if we could make sure those letters are sent.
We'll pen a fantastic letter and have the reputable mayor of West Melbourne sign those and get those off.
The pen. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you much.
Thank you. Any questions for the guest attorney for today? Are you following any of the state statute? I mean, some of the state things that they're proposing affect your other cities that you're representing?
Nothing. Well, Mr. McDowell just raised an issue with me that I had not been aware of that I'm going to look at that I can't speak to right at the moment.
That was a big tease.
Worth every penny of tonight.
It has to do with preemption, and I was somewhat unaware and taken by surprise. So I think the league is in favor of this, which is surprising, at least.
Yeah.
So I'll take a look at this, and if there's something out of this, I might send around an email to all of you that kind of breaks it down. Vacation rentals, I think. I think it was up for a vote today. I did not see if it actually passed or not. And there was something else I think was on a vote today, but I can't speak to what it was, so, sorry. That great words of wisdom there from me.
Form 6 pass, or?
Oh,
That's what they told us to email about.
okay.
How's that affect us and when we have to start doing it?
I don't know what the change is.
It comes effective, if it passed, January 1st. So you got to file by July 1st. That's when it's due. But I don't know the rules on it.
Now that we're talking about this, wait, hold on one second.
All right, so we're going to recess because we have a closed session negotiation meeting, so we'll take a little break, and then we will reconvene